Hello, digital world, and welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. I hope you're all doing well in these uncertain times. Today is a standard, probably nice and simple and short episode, but trying to stick to bringing these out weekly, even in the current climate and state of things, as we look forward to the future and the fact that we, here in Australia, we just don't know if we can see movies when we're supposed to, because we are locked down for the foreseeable future, which means in these times of crisis and times of worry, we have to remember that we have the ability to overcome the odds, to be the underdogs, to get on top of this situation. And stuff like that makes you feel good knowing and seeing other people doing it. So continuing on our theme from what we did last week, where I spoke about the Orville, because it's just feel-good, happy TV that gives you the warm, fuzzy feelings when you watch it, and it doesn't matter what's going on in the world around you outside, but you get the emotions you want to feel watching something like the Orville. We are shifting into movie territory here, and we are looking at the often mimicked, sometimes not successful, but usually for this guy, for Spliced In Later, it's a very good way of becoming one of my favorite movies. We're looking at the story of the underdogs, mostly in sports, but it can be all sorts of things. Those stories, those feel-good movies where you are following a protagonist who's down on their luck or has to overcome certain odds to triumph against adversity, to not save the day, or just prove something to themselves, prove something to people around them. But we as a viewer who are watching it get to go, I want this guy to succeed because I feel for him and I connect with him emotionally, and I want them to succeed. Oh, they did. I feel happy. Mission accomplished. Now, I will be talking specifically about a couple of different films in this episode, but there are tons of stories like this, and it's not limited to sports movies where a player or a team overcome the odds. It can also be adversity in overcoming the odds of your status quo, your setup in the world. Maybe you've been given a poor lot in life, and you have the ability to make something of your life or to change your life for the better, and things do well for you in that regard. There are tons in terms of personal character development and growth as well, not just limited to animation, live action animation, all sorts of stuff there. So there's so many here that trying to encompass them all would be difficult because it is a broad range. So before I talk about a couple of things here, not so much homework for people listening. The idea here is to remember those underdog feel-good movies which are designed for that purpose. They might be a bit shallow in their attempts to do it, but if the end result is that you watching it feel good and feel happier and feel a sense of achievement, either for the person you're watching or for yourself, then that's the type of attitude and feeling I think we need at this current point in our lives. So get on that. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff out there. You're probably thinking of them right now before I get into it. The one that kicks off this episode, the one that really inspired it for me as well, and it's also a movie that I can tick off on that long, arduous journey of trying to go through the 100 movies on my bucket list poster of movies that you should see before you die, I guess. But everybody knows this film. It's inspired tons of films just like it, but it is the story of Rocky from 1979, maybe, and starring Sylvester Stallone. Rocky is the epitome of the underdog story, specifically in boxing as well, and many films since then have tried to mimic it. And depending on what you like about it, who you like as an actor or who you like as a personal background story, there may be other films just like Rocky who you like more than Rocky. It just depends what you as a viewer gets out of it. But if you don't know the story of Rocky, and I guess another thing for this episode here is I'm just going to recommend all the movies I talk about, and we're going to go through them rather quickly. So hang on to your hats. If you are unfamiliar with the story of Rocky, it is the story of Sylvester Stallone as Rocky Balboa, who is a very down on his luck individual. He has not made much of his life. You have to open the movie, and he's a bit of a drifter. He works as the muscle for a loan shark. He's supposed to go out and break people's thumbs if they don't pay up the money. But of course, Rocky has a sweetheart. So if he can try and avoid those things. He is a boxer, but he doesn't really have the spirit or the drive to go anywhere with it. He competes in these piss poor back alley boxing fights for very little cash. He either will trounce the competition, or he will be beaten to a pulp because he doesn't keep in shape, he doesn't look after himself. But he has the skill to be a good boxer. He just does not have the drive, as his former manager Mickey often will tell him in the movie. It's like he sort of could have had class, could have been a contender, very much like the On the Waterfront speech, but he's just not doing anything. The only thing that he sort of looks forward to or goes for is that he forms an attraction to a pet shop lady called Adrian. And there's definitely... It's... Okay, so I'll get this out of the way early talking about this movie. Knowing where their relationship goes in later Rocky films, it might seem sweet. But if you are watching Rocky for the very first time, like I did back when I was very young, and Rocky was hitting on Adrian, Adrian did not seem interested at all and wanted him to stop. Now, the argument will be made that she was just shy, and she did like him, but she didn't know how to express herself. But it's uncomfortable now, in this day and age as well, with the stories you hear about Me Too and Hollywood and all that stuff as well, to have Rocky pushing his agenda and his interests on Adrian. And by all accounts, he kind of forces her to date him. I don't know. There's probably subtleties to their portrayals that I'm missing because I'm just your average Joe. But if you have not seen Rocky for a while, or if you remember Rocky in a way, just have a look at just this first relationship here in Rocky. From Rocky 2 onwards, it's fine. They are madly in love with each other and they support each other in everything they do. But I don't know. It's a little uncomfortable. Anyway, putting that aside, what sets the story in motion is Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed, the heavyweight champion of the world, who is looking for his next fight. No one wants to fight him, basically. Apollo Creed is just too good. So for a marketing gimmick, his manager says, this guy, the Italian stallion, Rocky Balboa, he's an underdog sort of person. Let's advertise the whole Cinderella story. Give him a chance to go for it, to take your title from you. He's not going to. He has no chance. But the publicity will be good. You'll appeal to certain demographics and personality that you're trying to get to pay attention to you as the heavyweight champion, all of that stuff. And we'll make a ton of money. Which Apollo Creed, confident as he is, he goes, yeah, cool, done it. I'm going to smash this guy. No chance. So yeah, Rocky, he takes the gig, and then through some inspiration, I guess, with how his relationship's going with Adrian, but how he talks to other people around him, he pulls himself together to actually compete in the fight. He starts training. He gets a proper manager. He puts in the hours. He puts in the time. He puts in the confidence and the belief in himself. Not so much to win the fight, but that he can do the fight at all. So you watch the movie and you really grow attached to Rocky's character, and you see him go through what he needs to do to get himself in shape to do the fight, and you see how much of an arrogant jerk that Apollo Creed actually is. So you are invested by the time that Rocky gets to his final fight. And the moral of the movie is not whether Rocky wins or loses. It is irrelevant who wins the boxing match between Rocky and Apollo Creed. The real story is that Rocky goes the distance. He proves to himself, to people around him who didn't expect him to the people who believed in him, all of that he was capable and he could do it. He had the spirit to go all around with Apollo Creed. Perfect stuff. Rocky as a character, the whole formula of the underdog whipping himself into shape and going up against the odds against a behemoth of a foe such as Apollo Creed is the formula. It is the staple for how underdog films have gone since then. And I don't know if Rocky may be at the top. But as I said, it's your personal opinion as to whether Rocky is better or worse. For instance, looking at the Rocky franchise as a whole, if you like Rocky, but you wanted the fight between Rocky and Apollo to go a certain way, and you were looking for more of a traditional sense of victory, then Rocky 2 is more for you. Rocky and Apollo Creed go at it again for a rematch. And in that movie is the clear, definitive winner. And that's the one where you get the big smiles on your face and the cheers and the stuff that you would expect normally. Which is probably why Rocky is an Academy Award when you film and Rocky 2 is not. Rocky has a less traditional sense of the underdog. Rocky 2 is more give the people what they want. But speaking for me personally, that's why I like Rocky 2 more than Rocky, because as much as I appreciate a good film and good storytelling, I love that feeling you get when the person you're rooting for goes against the odds and succeeds. So that's why for me, Rocky 2 is always the more favorite for me. I won't go into the rest of the Rocky films so much. It's the same sort of formula going on. I personally think they're all pretty good for different reasons. It does gravitate more and more away from the seriousness of Rocky and the ground of reality, to the point that by Rocky 4 it's literally a battle between America and the Soviet Union, and then it pivots again. But the interesting thing about Rocky Balboa and Sylvester Stallone's portrayal of him is that you're never not happy to see him whenever he returns. After the original 5 franchise run of Rocky 1 to 5, which I know a lot of people, Rocky 5 left a bad taste in their mouth in terms of where his journey eventually ended, which is fine. But then many years later, Rocky Balboa came back for 6, and the whole message of that movie was that Sylvester Stallone's getting old, Rocky's getting old, but don't count him out. He still has the ability to hold his own. It was very much a retread of the first film, but because you love Rocky as a character and he is fun to watch, and he's lovable, absolutely lovable, you're there for him again to go through essentially the same formula again, but this time he's got family dramas and his bones are creaking and all of that stuff. For me personally though, as much as I love Rocky and Rocky 2 and the Rocky stuff, it hit a high point for me, surprisingly, with the most recent films set in that franchise but not necessarily about Rocky, which is Creed, and to essence Creed 2. Unique films in that no one expected Creed to do particularly well. It sounded like a Sylvester Stallone gimmick where he's like, oh, I've got more Rocky story to tell, but instead I'm going to tell the story of Apollo Creed's son, Adonis Creed, who is also going to do the stuff that Rocky does. Essentially, it sort of sounded like, okay, whatever. And Creed has a notoriously very bad trailer, as people who are listening to this episode will attest to. But somehow Creed not only surprised people in terms of the quality of the film, but also in terms of the story and the feel. It captured that spirit that the Rocky franchise had established way back in 1979 and flipped it and still made it as good, if not better. Mainly in part because Michael B. Jordan is once again playing an incredibly likable character in Adonis Creed. This is a guy who is sort of the exact opposite of where Rocky is at the start of the franchise. He is famous by association. So he hasn't done anything to earn the name Creed or fame or publicity or whatever. But just by being Apollo Creed's son, he's in the limelight and he's being paid attention to and all that. So he, in this essence, doesn't want to prove to himself that he can go the distance. He wants to prove to the world that he can go the distance, not by name, but by personality. He's very much, for most of the film, he avoids the name Creed entirely. I think it's Adonis Johnson, maybe, or something. I can't really remember his other last name that he takes on. But of course, during that movie, he comes across Rocky, who agrees to train him. And Rocky is, as always, he's still the likable, wonderful person that you know, but he's also fallen on some hard times. He's not doing some well. A lot of people he knows have died. So he forms a connection, a father-son relationship with Adonis that he doesn't currently have with his current son. Creed, of course, he goes the distance, and again, Creed sort of copies that formula of Rocky. It's not whether Creed wins or loses his final boxing match, but that he proves to the world that he is his own man. He is not just the shadow of Apollo Creed. And that final boxing match, when Adonis steps up and the Rocky theme plays, has certainly got you cheering. And in essence, Creed 2 does the same sort of thing that Rocky 2 did for Rocky. Creed 2 goes that little extra bit of mile and throws in the schlock of connecting it to Rocky 4 and the battle between America and the Soviet Union, Rocky versus Drago. And you would think that it's not going to work, but somehow it still keeps that formula, that grounded reality approach that Creed had, while also giving the audience, the people watching, that satisfaction of seeing Creed go up against the son of the man who ended his father, and that it's a showdown that's been 3 decades in the making coming, and that one has more of someone is a clear definitive winner here, but also not by the way so straightforward that you would expect. So in essence, it's a notorious thing to say, but I've found that the 2 Creed films that came out recently, 2015 and 2018, I like more than the original Rocky films, and I'm very excited for Creed 3 coming out next year, and I hope that it brings that level of feel-good triumph that I've got out of these films so far. But it doesn't have to be just Rocky. There's certainly been several other films that encompass the underdog spirit. To be fair, for me personally, if it's boxing, I'm going to like it. It's my Achilles heel of sort. And while some haven't been as successful as Rocky and Creed, for me, they've been a lot of fun. I've only picked 2 out of several, because I think these follow the formula as much as I've established. But you have Southpaw starring Jake Gyllenhaal, which I think is based on a true story. It may not be, but that is the same sort of underdog story, but adding in the extra essence that Jake Gyllenhaal's character was at the top of his game. He was the best of the best, and then he went through a rather bad series of events that really knocked him down a peg. And then he has to start from the bottom when everyone else has given up on him and climb his way back up to the top and prove to himself that he has what it takes, which, perfect, love it. Also, I believe most people know about this one, but I only really just discovered it, which is Cinderella Man, which is based on a true story of Russell Crowe playing a boxer who was at the top of his game, but then the Great Depression hit in the 1930s. So not only did he not get his chance to go the distance, but he's barely struggling to stay on top of everything going on for his family and keeping food on the table in a society around him that is basically just crumbling thanks to that Depression era stuff. So when he has the chance to go back in and box again, he's fighting for more than just personal glory and stakes. He's fighting for his family, to be able to feed them. He doesn't want to become rich, but he just wants to be able to provide for them the only way he knows how, which is through boxing, which again, perfect stuff. It doesn't have to always be boxing. There's some other great underdog stories that I've mentioned here before. I believe I've talked about the Mighty Ducks before, but that's a trilogy of films that is guaranteed, regardless of whether they age poorly or not. Just seeing the Ducks on the ice, counted out when they were just District 5, don't know how to skate, and then Coach Bombay, played by Emilio Estevez, comes in and teaches them not only how to skate, but how to be a team and how to become the Ducks. Great stuff. I don't think I did a review of the Mighty Ducks Game Changers, which was just on Disney Plus, which was a continuation, but surprisingly that was good. It did what Cobra Kai did for the Karate Kid and recaptured that spirit of the Ducks, but also establishing it for a real world, and again going for these poor kids who aren't even allowed to play hockey because it's just so competitive these days, and they go from just a team, they just want to prove, they just want to have fun, they don't care if they win or lose, to oh my god, they're going to win the whole thing. And speaking of Cobra Kai, there is of course the Karate Kid, Daniel LaRusso, bullied at school, doesn't have any friends, he's given up on life, and then Mr. Miyagi teaches him how to do karate, which is lucky because the people that are bullying him are from Cobra Kai, who are a very vicious karate dojo. So they get to go karate against karate at the Karate All-State Valley Championship. And again, it's Daniel training with the lovable Mr. Miyagi, learning the skills and the ropes to protect himself, and then to fight back against the bullies and come out on top. Great stuff, absolutely. Sticking with other sports, there's also Remember the Titans, which is a really cool movie about football, but most importantly as well about racism and diversity. This was a team during a time when black people and white people were segregated, especially for schools. So in one of the first ever schools in America where black and white people were put in together, the football team had to also win all their games. And it starts off as they won't even trust each other or work together with each other, to not only overcoming that social differences with each other, but then becoming such a tight-knit family group that not only do they, of course, go the distance and prove to everybody that they're the best team in the whole world, but they become a family and they respect each other in a way that had not been done before. There's also Warrior, which is kind of boxing, but let's be fair, it's not, because mixed martial arts is not boxing. But I won't get into that. I do not have the expertise to stake a claim into which sport is better, but I will say boxing is better, and I'll move on from that. But Warrior takes the mixed martial arts, takes the underdog story for Joel Edgerton's character, where keep food on the table for his family, to pay for operations, all of that stuff, the only way he knows how. But there's a family drama to Warrior in that his long estranged brother, played by Tom Hardy, is also in this big super competition at Atlantic City. I believe it's Atlantic City. They had a massive falling out thanks to their alcoholic father, and he's in the competition as well, and no one knows why he's there, but he is unstoppable. So not only do they have to fix their family drama and figure out what's going on with him, but Joel Edgerton also has to prepare for the fact that if he wants to keep his family fed and in one piece and all of that stuff, he has to overcome the unstoppable might of his brother, which is a torn in places, which is, for a movie like this, it hits at all the right feels, which is just wonderful and emotional to watch as well. And finally, for sports, Eddie the Eagle. Eddie the Eagle, a true story of a ski jumper played by Taron Egerton back in the Winter Olympics, who was counted out because he just wanted to be in the Olympics. He didn't really know how to ski or how to jump, but by gum, he just wanted to compete. Hugh Jackman is his grizzled trainer who he doesn't want to have anything to do with him. He hates the sport, he hates the game, he's been disgraced. But the two of them have to come together so that Eddie can not only compete in the Olympics, but go far enough for it to matter, so that he will be respected and remembered for his appearance. Not there as a joke, but there to prove that he actually can do it. And this movie is up leaps and bounds because of the quality performance from Taron Egerton and Hugh Jackman. Speaking of Winter Olympics, let us not, of course, forget Cool Runnings. Cool Runnings rules. It is a fantastic movie about the Jamaican bobsled team. I think everybody knows Cool Runnings. You know the story. Jamaicans do not have snow, but they want to compete in the Winter Olympics. John Candy is their trainer. It's a big comedy film. They fall over themselves trying to learn how to get this bobsled thing working. Nobody gives them a chance. Everybody thinks this is a joke. It's either a funny joke or an offensive joke. But Sanka and friends, by God, they push forward together, and not only do they get to compete in the Olympics, but they leave a mark on the world into how impressive they are to have pushed through. Cool Runnings is great. I believe everybody should watch this movie. Half for the feel-good film, and also half because John Candy was a wonderful comedic actor who has gone too soon. And to see a showcase of his skills is to always include Cool Runnings in the John Candy lineup. To be fair, I focused on a ton of all the sports films, but that's the easiest one to pull the examples from out of my head sitting here. I'm sure if I gave myself more time to sit and pull from different categories, I would find all sorts of underdog stories from a variety of different places. But they're a few of my favorites that just sprang to mind now just talking to you. I'm sure you have favorites. I'm sure that this discussion will have reminded you of them. So feel free to let me know, although no one does, what your favorite underdog stories are. Feel free to enjoy rewatching all these movies, because boy are they great, and use them to get you through these very difficult times at the moment, because at the moment we need that joy, that guilty pleasure of just feeling good for the sake of good. A movie that pinpoints exactly where it is in your heart that you need that joy, that excitement, that connectivity, that positivity, that underdog movies like these are just oozing with. And it's wonderful to be experiencing them again in my mind and also in my eyeballs. So I hope you enjoyed. I will be back next week, I promise, for another episode. The next few weeks will be a bit rough depending on where movies are released in the world and how I have no access to them, which sucks more than you can imagine. But we'll keep on keeping on and we'll see how we go. But until then, stay safe, everybody. I love and appreciate you, as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.